Hello and welcome to another JNP Trove class review. I am your host JonNario, and today I'll be talking about the Revenant. The Revenant is a physical-based character that uses a spear as a weapon of choice, so its focus is close-range combat. It has a bonus 45% to its base maximum health without any gears or gems, and this is one of the few classes that doesn't have any energy, so having energy regeneration is useless on this class. And when you level up, you get health regeneration and stability, and at levels 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20 you get a bonus 3% to your maximum health. So this is the easiest class to get highest amounts of health. Also, this class has a bad dodge, so this character has a bad speed momentum. The Revenant is one of the most underrated classes in the game. Ever since the Geode rework, this class is a force to be reckoned. And this class can be used as a tank or a DPS, so it's very versatile. Now, let's talk about the combat ability and passive as well. Let's start with the most complicated thing about the Revenant, the passive ability. The Revenant's passive ability is called Vengeful Spirit, and the insanely long description reads: Basic attack and Bulwark Smash return 5% of the damage dealt after the first attack. Basic attack applies a debuff to targets, increasing the damage from all sources by 5%. Lasts for 5 seconds. A Spirit Wrath will spawn to protect you from death, empowering you until you can do so again. Thankfully, this description is very helpful because there's a lot to this ability. Let's start on the healing and debuff properties, then I'll get into the Spirit Wrath. When you take an enemy with a basic, they will get a debuff that allows you and everyone around you to do 5% more damage, and that lasts for 5 seconds. Tagging an enemy again will refresh the timer. When that enemy is debuffed, every basic attack and Bulwark Smash, aka the Shield Bash, that you hit will recover 5% of your maximum health. It does apply if multiple enemies are debuffed and you hit them all at the same time, so you can get incredible lifesteal when you hit multiple enemies with a basic attack or Bulwark Smash. Now for the Spirit Wrath. When you reach 1 health, in other words you die, instead of dying, a Spirit Wrath will spawn and you will recover 50% of your health, and you will get a fire-like effect on the Revenant's shoulder, indicating that the buff is active. While Spirit Wrath buff is active, you will not recover from death if you reach 1 HP, so be careful. When the Spirit Wrath buff is active, you will get a 100% bonus to your health regeneration, and you will also get a 50% bonus to your physical damage. It will also spawn a companion that attacks enemy, dealing 0.9 times damage each attack, and sometimes does a smash-like attack that does 3.5 times damage, which is pretty low for an ability, but it's not bad for an extra damage ability, since it can do critical hits. The companion lasts for 40 seconds, and this buff lasts for 75 seconds. Overall, this passive is obviously good. It brings so many benefits to this class, and it makes the Revenant practically invincible. With insane lifesteal property and having 2 lives is just incredible. This passive alone is what makes the Revenant such an amazing beginning class. Now let's continue with the simpler stuff about the Revenant. Now let's talk about one of the strongest basic attack in the game. The Revenant's basic attack has a really high 4 times damage, which is the highest raw multiplier if you don't include passive, and it is affected by attack speed, meaning using attack speed gear is good on the class, obviously. It has a range of 4 blocks, which is average for a close range character. Unfortunately, it's also one of the slowest basic attack in the game, attacking at a 1.2 times attacks per second. So even with that really high damage, the DPS is average amongst all characters. The Revenant attacks in a straight pattern, but does hit multiple enemies, so it has average crowd control. Also, it does have a chance of taunting. Unfortunately, I don't know the chances of this ability to proc, but taunting doesn't even work on Titan bosses, so it's whatever. And not to mention all of the bonuses that it gets from the passive ability. Overall, I would say the basic attack is good. Even though it's a slow basic attack, the high damage makes up for it. And it has decent crowd control, so it doesn't restrict the attack in any way. This basic attack is one of the best in the game, and this alone is why I would recommend this class for those who are starting the game. Now let's talk about the ability. Starting with the first ability, Bulwark Smash, which reads: damage and briefly taunts all enemies in a cone. This ability has a ridiculous multiplier of 9.5 times damage, which is tied as the highest raw multiplier if you don't include passive or buffs. It is tied with the Neon Ninja's class gem minus the critical damage bonus that ability gets. It has a range of 3.5 blocks and it attacks in a cone pattern, meaning it has really great crowd control. And it taunts enemies for 4 seconds. Sadly, it has a 5-second cooldown, so even with the ridiculous damage, it will take forever to come out. So overall, this ability is average, only because it has a 5-second cooldown, but the damage is great and it has incredible crowd control. The second ability which you get at level 3 is Spirit Spears, and the description reads: damage enemies in a cone in front of the Revenant, cost 3% of your maximum health to activate and 5% each tick. Press again to cancel. So this is considered an extra damage ability since you can activate it and then attack with other ability. This is also a toggle ability, meaning you can activate or deactivate it whenever you want. Now let's talk numbers. The damage multiplier of Spirit Spear is the not so common 2.5 times damage, which is bad for an ability, but since this is an extra damage ability, I would consider this ability good since it can do critical hits. This ability takes twice a second, meaning that this ability has a total of 5 times damage every second, making this one of the best extra damage abilities in the game. It has a range of 4.5 blocks in distance, which is average for a close range ability. And it attacks in a cone in front of the Revenant, so it has incredible crowd control. When you activate this ability, it will deal 3% of your maximum health, and then it will take 5% of your health every second, and this ability won't stop damaging, so it's capable of killing you. Also, while this ability is active, you move at a 1/3 of your movement speed, and you're also immune to knockback. Overall, I will consider this ability to be good, since it's a toggle ability that can toggle critical hits and does decent damage. Even though it takes health while active, you still have the passive ability, not to mention the lifesteal. The ultimate ability which you get at level 5 is called Spirit Storm, which reads: a cyclone pulls foes towards the Revenant and randomly fires exploding spirit blasts, healing players for 5% of their maximum health and damaging enemy. Costs 20% health to use. This is another extra damage ability since you can activate it and attack with other abilities at the same time. And this ability is able to pull enemies, making this a really good crowd control ability. Now let's talk numbers. It does at 1.85 times damage and it takes roughly 4 times a second. So in total it has a 7.4 times damage multiplier a second, which is pretty high even for a regular ability. It has a 3 block damage radius and it has an extra half a block of pulling distance, so the range is not bad. It also spawns orbs randomly that does 1.1 times damage, which sounds low, but remember that this is an extra damage ability, which is good since all the things I mentioned before do critical hits. Also, the spirit orbs will heal both you and nearby allies 5% health each orb, and this ability costs 20% of your health when you activate it and you're immune to knockback. Overall, this ability is surprisingly good. It is an extra damage ability that can pull enemy, does damage, and is capable of healing allies. It used to not allow you to go into mounts, but you can use the mount while you have the ult, but the ult doesn't work, and you used to move at a 50% movement speed, but that also got removed. So I would say use this ability as often as you can, because it will make your grinding a lot easier. This ultimate ability has a 5-second duration and a 40-second cooldown. That's all on the ability. Now let's talk about the class gem ability. Like all classes, the Revenant has a class gem ability and it's called Aegis Assault, which reads: Bulwark Bash loses its cooldown and applies a stacking damage over time effect to enemies. The damage over time effect does not leech health. So this is an amplification of the pretty strong ability that is the Bulwark Smash, and it doesn't give that much amplification other than the cooldown reduction. It doesn't change the damage in any way, so it keeps the really high 9.5 times damage, but reduces the cooldown from 5 seconds to 1 second, which is very nice since this is a really high damage ability. It also applies a stacking damage over time that does 0.33 times damage each stack with a total of 5 stack, making it a total of 1.65 times damage, and this cannot crit, so it's pretty bad even at max stacks. The first hit will add 2 stacks and then each smash will keep adding stacks. It takes once a second and the duration lasts for 3 seconds, but each Bulwark Smash will refresh its timer. And that's it! Overall, this class gen I would say it is average. It does fix the biggest problem of Bulwark's Bash, being the timer, but that's about it. The damage over time barely does any damage and it cannot do critical hit, and not to mention it doesn't help the lifesteal department either. So it's pretty good for the Revenant, but seeing that this is the class gen, that's why I rate it as average. So that's the class gen. Now let's talk about the subclasses, but as always, if you don't want to hear the explanation on tiers and such, go to the time on screen or click the timer in the description below. For those who want to stay, this is the subclass explanation and the tiers. Enjoy, and I'll see you in a bit. Before I talk about the subclass, I'll tell you how the subclass works first. There is one character level and one power rank. Levels 1 through 9 gives you the starting tier. At level 10 you get the second tier, then it's on a 5 level interval to keep increasing the subclass tier, capping at tier 6 at level 30. And power ranks tier 1 is at 1 power rank, and at 5000 power rank is the second tier. Then it's on a 5000 power rank interval, capping also at tier 6 at 25,000 power rank. Also, you get a bonus power rank when equipping a subclass. Levels 1 through 9 you get 15 bonus power rank. At level 10 you get 15 more power rank. Then it's every 5 levels you get 15 bonus power rank until you hit level 30, which gives you a total of 90 power rank. So when you're equipping a different character subclass, this power rank doesn't count towards the tier list. That's why you might see the power rank on a character lower than usual when equipping a subclass. Welcome back, and here's the subclass. The Revenant subclass Hatred of the Oathbound is a lifesteal ability that gives health for every damage that you do, and it also gives reduced incoming damage based on your Revenant's level. Tier 1 on character level reduces all incoming damage by 1%. Tier 2 is 2%, Tier 3 is 3%, Tier 4 is 4%, Tier 5 is 5%, and Tier 6 is 6% reduced incoming damage. And the subclass on power rank is the lifesteal ability. It gives a small amount of health for each time you hit an enemy. It can be anything, including damage over time abilities. It has an internal cooldown of 0.25 seconds, or in other words, you can heal 4 times a second. And the power rank tiers increases the health percentage you get when you hit an enemy. Tier 1 it starts at 1% of health returned per enemy hit. Tier 2 is 1.5%, Tier 3 is 2%, Tier 4 is 2.5%, Tier 5 is 3%, and Tier 6 is 3.5% health recovery on enemy hit. So in other words, you will get a little bit more survivability each time you power up the subclass. I would say this subclass is worth powering up for the first couple of tiers, and it's not 100% necessary getting it maxed out. Overall, I would say this subclass is good. This subclass is very good for survivability, since the lifesteal you get is pretty much around the same as the Prowling Shadow or Samantha allies, which can be stacked by the way, making this subclass very nice for those who are soloing Shadow Tower or are not using healing allies like Rat the Berserker or Prefect Penguin. And also this class will make your flask last a little bit longer. That's all on the Revenant. It's no surprise that I rate this class good, since this class I would say is almost a complete class. It's good at any portion of the game and it can be used as in any playstyle. It can be DPS or tank. It has 2 lives, so dying with this class is pretty difficult, and not to mention it has insane lifesteal and the damage is just incredibly high. But the DPS is not the best, since the basic attack is good but it's a little bit slow. And the Bulwark Bash is also very powerful, but it does have a pretty long cooldown without class gen. And even with the class gen, it still has a 1 second cooldown, making it not have a good DPS. But other than that, I would strongly recommend using this class for those who are wondering which class they should start with, or if you don't like the current class that you use as a main. My gear recommendation is to get critical damage that can stand on all your pieces of gear. Meaning if you want to use basic attack, you can use attack speed. Or if you want to try and use speed farm, which you can swap to movement speed as well. As of the ring, use whatever you like but energy regen, since this class has no energy to begin with. Anyways, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think on the class in the comments below, and tell me which class I should do in the next episode. Currently, the one who's winning for the next episode is the ever so popular Gunslinger. So let me know if you want to see the Gunslinger for the next episode in the comments below, and feedback is greatly appreciated. Once again, thank you for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time. Take care and keep on hunting. See ya!